Hey guys, Victor here, and today we're going to be doing a deck profile on Spright, which, despite having Elf recently be banned in the latest Forbidden and Limited list, is still more than capable of winning on its own, as it's proven time and time again that this deck is incredibly resilient and still fully capable of winning major events, such as YCS Lima, which it actually recently won. So one of the biggest advantages of Spright, though, is that there are so many different methods that you can take to actually build this and make it like a competent deck. So you can go with like Gishki Spright, Melfi Spright, Pure Spright, and just so many different cool variants that honestly still tend to do the same thing, just like slightly differently. And with today's approach, I decided to go more in like a Handtrap heavy build just because the format is incredibly varied. So I wanted to be as prepared for everything as possible, if that makes sense. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the deck profile. Now when it comes to the monsters, the main like Spright lineup and normal summons and stuff like that, it doesn't really change because it's honestly pretty generic regardless of which variant you're playing. But with that in mind, we're going to be playing 3 Spright Blue, not much to say. It searches any Spright monster. Then we have 3 Spright Jet, searches any Spright spell. And we have 1 Spright Carrot with 1 Spright Red. One negates spells and traps, the other one negates monster effects. And typically, you don't really need more than one, but there are times where like playing multiples of either Spright Red or Carrot does come up, but we don't really need that for this variant because we're so hand trap heavy compared to most. And then after that, we're going to be playing 3 Nimble Beaver. It's going to be your main priority to normal summon this as often as possible, because when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon either one level 3 Nimble monster from your deck or the graveyard. So this card's great early game, mid game, late game, whatever. Just a fantastic card to always have in your hand to be able to normal summon. And then we're going to be playing 2 Nimble Angler. Really good card. You always send this off a Spright Sprint, and then when you send it off a Sprint, its effect will activate to special summon a Nimble Beaver, which in turn gives you a free link 2, or I guess a free link 2 plus this to make it in Xyz, which is typically gigantic. And then for our final main monster, we're going to be playing 2 Swap Frogs. I still enjoy playing the Swap Frog package just because having access to Toadally Awesome can sometimes straight up just win you the game on its own, because the 1 negate is nothing to laugh at. So yeah, we're still playing the 2 swaps. And that's it for like the actual engine portion. So we're going to cut over to the hand trap portion really quick because it does take up a good chunk of this deck. So kicking off the hand trap portion of the monster lineup, we're going to be playing 3 Nibiru the Primal Being, which I honestly feel is still an incredibly powerful card because there are so many players that are just straight up not respecting this still. Whether it's Cavalry players that just refuse to not zone lock people, or even Trap Tricks players that are like abusing cards such as Parallel Exceed, and instead of going straight for Rafflesia, they're going to go for the other Trap Tricks that special summons from the deck, and they're just opening themselves up to being punished so often. Yeah, I still think this is just a fantastic card because it punishes the greedy players, which, since this is Yu-Gi-Oh!, make up a large majority of the player base. And then after that, we're going to be playing the Psy-frame package. So that means 3 Psy-framegear Gamma along with the 1 Psy-frame driver. Gamma's great, especially when you lose the die roll, because it's able to stop impactful cards such as Kashtira Fenrir or Kashtira Unicorn especially, which give them access to any spell or trap card that they want from their deck. And it combos really well with Nibiru, so even if you do play against like a Trap Tricks player and they do, go for Rafflesia, if you open the Nibiru plus the Gamma, you're still perfectly fine, especially since you're going to be special summoning the Gamma first, and then the Nibiru will tribute it away after, so you're going to be able to use Gamma again later on in the duel. But yeah, that's 6 or 7 very important cards. Like, sure, sometimes you'll draw the, the driver, but that's the price you pay when you play Gamma. And then after that, I'm trying out 3 Droll and Lockbirds because, I don't know, I feel like it's really underrated right now because it's able to stop so many important decks from, just continuously searching, mainly Kashtira. If they start like a field spell and you Droll them, their entire turns can straight up just end. And even like Branded currently is just heavily searching with Branded Lost, Aluber, whatever. Yeah, this card's just a really good card, but there are some really bad matchups, like if you play against Labyrinth, because they'll typically only have like 1 search or 1 draw that turn. And then if you draw them, they're like, okay, cool, you just -1 yourself, and they'll just set all their traps and pass. So yeah, but I still think the potential is there. It's just, I guess, a little bit more on the greedy side. And then after that, we're only going to be playing 2 Ash Blossoms. Yeah, Ash Blossom is still really good, and it's especially good against like Branded, for example, because if you Ash the Branded Fusion, you can straight up just win the game right there. But there are a lot of matchups where I feel like it's just not the greatest, but it's still like solid. So yeah, just 2. If I wasn't playing the Drolls, this would easily be a 3 of, but since we are playing the Drolls for now, it's just 2. And then for our final hand trap, we're gonna be playing 2 Effect Veiler. I decided to cut Infinite Impermanence and move it over to the side instead of the main, just mainly because Trap Tricks is literally everywhere. And instead I've opted to play Effect Veiler, which, you know, it still has uses in pretty much every single matchup that Imperm would, but it's not absolutely ineffective against Trap Tricks, which, you know, are all immune to normal traps. So yeah, just 2 Effect Veiler, Effect Negation still good. And with that, that's the monster lineup. And now we can finally move on to the spell portion of the deck. So the spell portion of the deck, it's really small, only 10 cards, but each card is still incredibly powerful in what they're able to do. So we're gonna have the 3 Spright starter. Not much to say, it's starter. It's a 1-card starter, as it's its name, to pretty much give you access to your entire deck, no matter what you want to do. Yeah, just a really good card. And then we're also going to be playing 3 emergency teleports. Since we're playing the Psy-frames, I opted to play the emergency teleports too, because there are times where just, you know, like you already have like committed a card to the field, so you can't activate your gammas, but this allows us to make our gammas a lot more useful, since they are level 2, so they do, like, you know, mesh really well with this deck. And just being able to have like that extra fodder goes a long way in ensuring that you can win the game. And then we're going to be playing 3 Book of Eclipse as well, just in case the hand traps aren't enough to stop the opponent. This one will typically do the, you know, heavy lifting as well, because 1, it's great bait for cards like Ash Blossom, and then 2, being able to Book of Moon everything without targeting is huge in a lot of matchups. Whether you're playing against like Sword Soul, which need to be face up to target, or even destroy with like Blackout. Obviously, it's good against Kashtira if they don't lock out all your spells and trap card zones, but we don't really have to worry about that because we have Nibiru. And then speaking of Nibiru, you can protect yourself from like your own Nibirus if you really want to, because any card that's face down will not be tributed. And yeah, there's just so many matchups where Book of Eclipse is able to break their entire board, or just allow it so that you can make your own board to break their board. And then our final spell is just 1 Spright Smasher, it's just good removal. And then we play 1 trap, which is the Spright Double Cross, which is also just really solid, especially for like your normal end boards, because it's honestly like at times this card alone could just be game ending, especially if you play against like something that's really Graver reliant, right? Because you can take that card and then you can either like special summon it to your field, give it to one of your monsters as a material. Just yeah, card's great. Honestly, it's a little bit too good. Luckily, it's just a trap, so it's a little bit slower. But if you go first, you typically already won, because your boards will try to end usually on like Toad plus like 2 to 3 back row. Then like, you always have like your negate, whether it's like red or carrot or whatever. And yeah, it's just like a mess for your opponent if you are able to win the die roll. And with that, that's the main deck, 40 cards like always. And now we can finally move on to the extra deck. Now we are of course going to be kicking off the extra deck with 2 Gigantic Spright. There really isn't much to say. This card just gives you access to any single level 2 monster that you want from your deck. So it literally feeds your entire engine, and then it also makes you OTK your opponent a lot more easily, because it becomes 3200 attack whenever it has any kind of extra deck monster as like a material. So yeah, you typically don't really need 3, because by the time the second one's coming out, the game's already over. And then after that, we'll be playing 1 Totally Awesome, because it's totally awesome. It's a free negate that recycles any water monster and lets you take whatever you negate as long as you destroy it. Then we play number 29 Mannequin Cat. Card's really good, especially in games 2 and 3, because typically in your side deck for like this type of generic deck, you're going to have some kind of strong floodgate, whether it's like a Thunder King Ryo or a Chaos Hunter, or just things of that nature. And what this allows you to do is basically summon one of those straight from your deck. And yeah, typically whatever you bring out is going to be more than enough to win the game on its own. So now we're going to be playing 1 number 29 Mannequin Cat. And then we're also going to be playing 1 Sky Cavalry Centaurea. This card's really good because it can't be destroyed by battle, so it pretty much becomes like the perfect Xyz for cards such as Zeus. And then it also has an additional effect where you can detach 1 material from this card to return that opponent's monster to the hand, and obviously whatever you're returning is the monster this card battled. And then we're playing 1 Onibimaru Soul Sweeper. This card just to help like get rid of any problematic cards by banishing them. And then once you banish, it pretty much you have to OTK your opponent that turn, because otherwise the card comes back. But yeah, card's just good. And then something that isn't played all that often is number 2 Ninja Shadow Mosquito. And this card is really cool and actually enables really easy OTKs, because what it does is when this card, like, you know, battles or whatever, you can detach one material, and then you can place one counter on one face-up monster your opponent controls. And it's not even when this card battles, it's when any card battles. And if you do, every time a monster declares an attack, one of your monsters, you can burn your opponent for that monster's attack that has the counter, right? So if your opponent has like a strong like 3k beat stick on the field, you can put a counter on that, and then you can use your monsters to attack other cards on the field, and then your opponent will get like burned 3k every time you declare an attack, even if that monster that with the counter is not the one that's, you know, currently being battled. So this card just literally enables you to beat your opponent as soon as possible. And it's a really underrated card that I'm surprised more people don't take advantage of. And then after that, we're going to be playing the one Downerd Magician along with the one Zeus. The only change I would maybe make is playing one more Zeus, but for now, one is fine, honestly. If you're making more than one Zeus, the game's already too grindy, and yeah, you're probably like in a really bad position. So the chances of you winning are pretty slim, but it's honestly fine for the most part. One Zeus is normally enough to get the job done. And that's it for the XZs, but we do play some links, starting off with 2 Spright Sprint. This is going to be your first monster from the extra deck that you typically make, because you're always going to want to send like the Angler, and then with the Angler you get your Beaver, and then you overlay those two into Gigantic. But yeah, I would just say just a good card. And then since we're playing Psy-frames, I decided to play one Psy-frame Lord Lambda, just because there are times where you want the Psy-frames to be live, so you just go straight into this, and then yeah, that's pretty much all she wrote. Even if you have monsters on your field, you're going to be able to use your Gammas from your hand, as long as Lambda's up. I'll also be playing the one the Dark Charmer Gloomy. It's just a cool extender that you can use to take your opponent's monsters, and then from there you can either like XZs or link with it, whatever you choose. So yeah, just a good generic card to have. And then next we're playing one Bujinki Ahashima. This is going to be the method, or the main method, that you use to go into Totally Awesome. Because what you do is after Swap Frog gets summoned and you your second swap, you just add it to your hand, and then you make this, and this allows you to special summon the swap from your hand and the swap from your grave, and then you just make Totally Awesome. So yeah, just a really cool and good card. And then lastly, we're playing one Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. This card doesn't really come up. It's mainly just for those decks that, you know, play Protect the Castle. So if you run against like a Attic Nister deck, right, they're always going to end on the arrival. So you just set up resources, and then you basically contact it away into this. So yeah, just a nice card to have just in case those situations pop up. And with that, that's the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.